Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today, as promised, we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into Eyes Beyond the Torchlight, the RPG or fantasy adventure game. This is by Workhorse RPG Studios and Scott Myers, and you may have seen my little quick initial first impressions video, but if you haven't, no worries, you can go back and watch it, or you can just hang out here with us when we discuss this particular game. We're going to go a little bit more in depth. I'm not going to go through every page in the book, but I'm going to do at least a healthy respect of how, or what I think are the most important points of this book. This is the Amazon copy. This is, you can see the cover. The back is very simplistic, very, very nice. It is a sewn binding there. Very nice. The quality of this is really, really amazing. The only drawback I have with Amazon is the packaging that they ship it in is usually horrible. This book came in a box with just the mailing slip, and if I remember correctly, that was it. It was just bare naked in the box like this, and that's always what drove me nuts about Amazon, is that such a huge company, and yet you get a book from a smaller role-playing game companies, and they're packaged very, very well. Thankfully, this copy was not damaged in shipping, but it still sketches me out whenever I get something from Amazon. So let's crack this open and take a look inside and kind of show you what you're going to expect from Eyes Beyond the Torchlight. And I'll go over sort of some of the major aspects of this game and what makes this game, I think, truly unique and makes it very, very worth your time getting and reading the book as well as playing the book. So first off, title pages, table of contents, nice glossary to start the thing, a little introduction by the author talking about what it is that kind of brought him to designing this game and how his influences shaped the game that it is today. This page here, page 6 and 7, is what I'm going to focus mostly on today, because this covers everything in the game that makes this game truly unique. First of all, it is called the Target 12 system, and what that means is that your target number in this game is always going to be 12. And that's going to vary a little bit here and there, but 12 is going to be your main target number of everything you're going to do. And how do you reach that target number is you're going to be rolling, every time you're attempting to do something, you're going to be rolling a d20 and whatever your stat die is. And we'll get into the stats in a few minutes. There are, you'll recognize a lot of the stats and stuff, but you're going to be, your stats are not going to be a numerical value, it'll be a die code. So a D4, a D6, a D8, that kind of thing. You'll be rolling that in conjunction with the D20 and adding those up and trying to meet or exceed the target number of 12. It's very simple to teach this game. It's very easy to sort of grasp the idea, and then there are certain modifiers that will, increase the difficulty. It's not always just so simple as trying to reach 12. By saying that, there are easy and hard modifiers. So if there's a task that you're doing that is rather easy, that the game master decides is really sort of an easy task to do, or a difficult task to do, they're going to have you roll an additional d6 along with your d20 and your modifier stat, your stat die, and you're going to either subtract the roll of the d6 or add the roll of the d6. So if the task is easy, you're going to subtract, if the roll is easy, you're going to add the result of a d6 roll to your roll. And if the task is hard, you're going to subtract the number from your d6 roll from your total, making that task a little bit more easy, or a little bit more difficult. The stat die, there are 6 stats. You're going to have body, mind, soul, fighting, shooting, and dodge. Most of the rolls in this game are very player facing, meaning that the players are going to be rolling most of the dice in this game. This is something that a few years ago I was not really keen on, because as a game master, I love to roll dice, and I want to be involved in that process as well at the table too. But over the years of trying to force myself into playing games that are very player facing, I've come to appreciate this aspect of a game very, very much. Isn't my all-time favorite? No, because I still love to roll dice as a game master, and you get to do that a bit in here. But I have come to appreciate the fact that being a player-facing type of a game, it frees you up as a game master to delve deeper into the story. You're worried less about dice modifiers and adding things together and making sure you have everything correct to roll dice, and you have all the modifiers and stuff that you need for your villains to attack. And it allows you to simply enjoy the game, get into the game, and delve deeper into the story. It gives you a little bit more freedom and a couple things less to worry about. So I've come to really appreciate that. And I think that Eyes Beyond the Torchlight exemplifies that very, very well. Damage is very unique in this game as well, too. Being in the target 12 system, how damage works in this game is that whenever you roll, if you're successful in your roll, you're going to take the number rolled on your stat die, so your D6, your D4, your D8, D10, whatever it might be, and whatever the number rolled on that die is, becomes the damage for that particular attack. So, the better you are at something, the higher your stat and your die code is, the more chances you're going to have of doing more damage. It's simple as that. It's very, very nice. It's no longer keeping track of different types of weapons and how much damage they can do. It's all rolled into one simple roll when doing damage. Threats. Now, here's where the game gets interesting. So every creature, every villain, certain objects and tests will have a threat value. What the threat value is a numerical number that you're going to subtract from your roll that you're either attempting to do something or attack a creature. And the more powerful the villain or that object is, the higher the threat value is going to be. Thus, you're going to subtract that higher threat value from your roll, making it a little bit more difficult in order to do damage, to successfully attack or complete that particular objective. Very, very cool. Very well done. Very integrated into the system again, of everything happening with one single die roll. A couple of things that make this game again more unique. This is you see this a lot in a lot of different games. Savage Worlds uses this a lot, but hero and villain points. You're going to have at the start of every session a set of around 5 hero points, which can be used at any time. But there's also the villains. The game master gets to use villain points, much like hero points, against the players as well too. So that's a little bit of an incentive to be the game master, and to mitigate the fact that you don't get to roll dice very often. You also have edges and hindrances. Again, something that's, if you're familiar with Savage Worlds, you'll notice that. You'll recognize that right away. Again, it's things like having dark vision, or being excellent at archery, or being a master swordsman. Those kinds of things. Those are edges, and hindrances are going to be things that sort of add flavor to your character and might give you a little hiccup along your journeys. One of the things I truly appreciate about this game is the spellcasting. Spellcasting, to me, it should be something that's always has a threat, has a risk to it. What he's done in this game is he's simplified spellcasting in that there's not tomes and tomes and tomes of spells, which I can appreciate tons and options of spells, having that available to players and your characters, but I think that this is done very well, and that he's simplified down to basically the spells that are most often taken, and you're rolling well, if you're using a magic user, you're going to be rolling your mind stat, and if you're using a cleric, you're using your soul stat to modify that. But you're always going to be making a spellcasting roll in order to see if the spells are successful, and I love that. I think that that's genius. I just love when a game makes spellcasting something that's dangerous and has a threat of failure. Very, very well done. I appreciate that very, very much. And that's, I mean, a great layout. These 2 pages, pages 6 and 7, are a great layout of what to expect from this game. Beyond that, it's all going to be filler and filling in sort of the holes that are left in these short paragraphs. So we'll go down here, the basic rules. Again, very, very simple. Using powers is what they refer to as spells. Goes over the target numbers again, talks about when to roll, when not to roll, consequences of a failure. Also, the art in this book is phenomenal. I love games that use black and white line artwork. I can appreciate full color. I come from, my core when I began was AD&D 2nd edition. So I really appreciate a great, beautiful piece of splash art. But I also really, really enjoy this. It feels very classic to me. And I just love the fact that the artwork and all in this whole book is black and white, but very evocative of the setting as well too. Just beautifully done. The layout of the book is very, very well done. You have these page edgings that look like columns. It just gives a very evocative feel. This sort of marbleizing. I don't know if you can actually see that in the video very well, but sort of marbleizing to the background of the pages just really adds an extra touch to the game itself. He goes into the target 12. He talks about difficulty numbers and target numbers. These are numbers that can be added or subtracted to your roll in order to make the game a little bit more intense. Talks about easy and hard. We talked about this earlier. It's adding or subtracting a d6 from your roll. Talks about how damage works. We talked about that a little bit before. It's the number that you've rolled on your stat die will determine how much damage you do. Hero and villain points. He goes in more detail on heroes and villain points, what they can be used for, what the heroes can use theirs for, what the villains or the game master can use the villain points for. Super simplistic time and movement. It's broken down into rounds, minutes, hours, and days as far as time goes. Ranges, very, very simplified. No more like, you can move this far or whatever. It's close. The ranges are close, near, far, and very far. So if you're using a grid, close is no greater than 1 square 5 feet away. It's very simplified. It's very, very nice. It's very compact. It's easy once you get the hang of it. Once you've played it maybe in one session, it's easy to be able to say, well, how, the player says, how far away is this creature from me? He's far. So you're talking 24 squares or about 120 feet. Roughly, these are kind of, estimated sort of ranges. Moving on, we talk about light, we talk about rest and healing. There's a short and long rest, which you'll be very familiar with if you are familiar with like D&D 5th edition. But he also throws in a breather, and I don't know if I've ever encountered this before, but this is kind of a neat aspect. After the combat ends, you can take a few minutes to take a breather, and you're going to roll your body die, and you're going to regain that many hit points. So it's a very quick sort of short rest. And I don't know if I've ever encountered that before, but very, very interesting concept. I feel like maybe I have, but it feels like it fits really well here. And I appreciate the fact that just after, put your hands on your knees, take a deep breath, kind of regroup yourself, and then press on. Nice, very nice touch. Combat and combat rules. Basic combat, how that all works. We talked about that a little bit before. It talks about the action and sequence of combat. It goes into dodge rolls. Goes into how armor works. Armor is damage reduction. So the stronger your armor, the more damage it's going to reduce incoming. Shields increase your dodge dice. You do have dodge because the player facing rolls are in effect. What happens is that when a creature attacks or a villain attacks your character, the DM or the game master does not roll any dice for that. You're the player going to roll those dice as a dodge dice or as a dodge roll to try to avoid the damage. Fighting combat talks about how all that works. You'll see a lot of things in here that you'll find familiar: charging, cleaving, ganging up on an enemy. Standard stuff, but very, essential to sort of a role-playing game. shooting combat, and then more combat is just a short page that talks about other things that you can do in combat that go beyond sort of just shooting and fighting in melee. So you have unarmed combat, you have what happens when you attack from the rear, underwater combat, super, super easy, small little paragraph, aerial combat, falling, stat loss, using an object during combat, using one or more than one action during a combat. Again, essential but very compact, very, very simplified, very well done. We go into healing and dying. Again, standard things. I don't want to spoil all this for you because I really want you to go out and grab a copy of this and experience it for yourself. Then we go into character creation. I'm going to skip over a little bit of this because it's again, once you understand the target 12 system and how that you have stat dice, that's again a very simplified character creation process. It happens very, very quickly, which is very nice. You're not spending hours upon hours creating a character. Now, don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed long character creation processes in the past. I really enjoy those types of things. But there's a time when you just want to get a character up and going fairly quickly and get into a game. And this is a great way to do that. You have Ancestries. These are your choices to play as characters. You have Dwarf, you have Elf, you have Gnome, Halfling, Half-Elf, Half-Orc. Again, pretty standard fantasy tropes, things that you're going to find in a lot of other games, and of course, human. Then you have archetypes, which are going to be sort of your character classes, and there are, I believe, 4 of them in here. Yes, there's Cleric, Mage, Rogue, and Warrior. And what you'll see here, I thought this was a really cool concept. So you've got this black and white line art drawing, beautifully, again, very evocative. I love it. I love just flipping through this, looking at the artwork. It's gorgeous. But what you'll see in the archetypes page is pretty awesome. I really enjoy this. So when you get to this page, you have these sort of silhouettes in the background. This is your mage character. It allows for you to have kind of an evocative idea of what your character that your archetype that you're taking is, but at the same time leaves a lot more space for you to fill in details on the page. I thought that was a really wonderful touch. I really enjoy it. It's a little bit of a departure from the other standard line art drawings and stuff, but I thought this was really, really cool. I love the silhouette aspect of the archetype pages. Again, you'll see it with Rogue, you see it with Warrior. And then we go into backgrounds. Backgrounds, again, if you're familiar with D&D 5th edition, they'll be pretty familiar to you. What this does is that if any time you can use your background, so whatever your background might happen to be, if you can describe that and roll it into whatever it is that you're currently doing, the situation in game, it's going to make your roll easy. So you're going to add a d6 and add that number that you roll on d6 to your target, to reaching that target of 12. Very, very well done. I love this aspect of backgrounds. I've used this in my my minimalistic game. Your background simply is a way of you to be able to further the depth of your character and gives you a small bonus into the game as well too. And it makes it feel a little bit more real. So if, say, your background is blacksmith and your sword breaks, and you're going to attempt to reforge your sword, or at least attempt to repair it in some way, or an armor has a crack in it, you're going to try to attempt to do that. Because you have the background of being a blacksmith, it's going to make your roll easier. List of backgrounds. These are just a list of sample backgrounds. Very, very easy to create your own if you want to create your own. You've got everything from acolyte to scholar to minstrel to herder to hunter. There's very short, just little descriptions, and it gives you a little bit more freedom as a player in order to integrate those ideas into the game as well. Gear, weapons, powers. This is the list of mage powers. That simple, that short. Cleric powers, that simple, that short. Very compact, very quick. There's no more endless books of spells, which again, don't get me wrong, I do love having access to lots of spells, but this makes the game very quick. It makes the game very enjoyable. And each one of these powers is has a little bit of gray area, in that you could sort of do multiple things with a little bit of imagination in the game as well. So think of them as being sort of platforms for further exploration of those powers. So we're going to edges and hindrances. Again, we're just going to quickly flip through the rest of this book here. I just kind of want to give you a good feel of everything in here, what you can expect. But again, I don't want to spoil everything for you. I want you to be surprised by some of the stuff. And there's a lot of cool stuff in here to explore and to discover. Edges, again, those are things that, like I said, if you're familiar with Savage Worlds, you've seen this before. But things like brawling, things like armored, artistic, attractive, things that are simply going to give you an edge in a certain situation. And again, very, very compact, very in a woodland stride. You are completely untraceable in a wooded environment. That's it. That's what that hindrance does for you. And again, leaves it enough open. It feels very old school to me in that aspect, where it leaves a lot of sort of gray areas for you and your game master and your group at the table to explore. What does it mean to be completely untraceable? Given the situation, it can mean a lot of different things. And I like that a lot about what Scott has done with this sort of aspect of things. They're short, they're simple, and they give you a lot of area of flexibility for you to actually be more narratively driven in your game. Hindrances, again, same thing as edges, but backwards, right? Fragile, forgetful, fear of something, coward, clumsy. So clumsy reads, when attempting any action that involves balance, rolls are hard. So you're going to roll an extra d6, you're going to subtract that from your roll. So you're trying to cross a chasm, but you're trying to walk across that on a 2x4. Going to be very, very, you tend to be a little bit more clumsy than the rest of the party, and it's going to make things a little bit more difficult for you. So again, adds more flavor, more narrative context to the game itself. Equipment, coins, pretty standard. Armor descriptions broken down into 3 categories: light armor, medium armor, heavy armor. Light armor is going to reduce the damage by 1 point, medium 2, heavy 3 points, and a shield again gives you a bonus to your dodge roll. Or think of it like a parry type of a thing. Weapons, because weapon damage is all done and calculated during that one single roll with your attribute dice, it simply gives you some traits for each of the different weapons, how many hands it takes to wield that weapon, their pricing, and then their ranges is how far they can reach. This is what we're looking at here is the shooting weapons. So if you look at sling, it doesn't have any traits, it takes 2 hands to wield, mostly because you're loading the stone and then swinging it. It costs 2 gold pieces, and then the range is far. So up to, 120 feet, I think the range of far was. Again, very simple. The gear section, standard stuff that you would find in any fantasy role-playing game, but more importantly, feels very old school to me, right? This is just a list of stuff. Saddlebags, 1 gold piece. A shovel, 2 gold pieces. Parchment, 1 gold piece. And again, it leaves you a little bit of area for you to have a more narrative focus on the game by saying, what does the parchment look like? What's it made out of? How thick is it? And my all-time favorite, because I feel like every fantasy game should have one of these because it's a classic trope and it's a very funny joke, but a 10-foot pole. If you're playing any old school games, you'll get that. Goes into a little bit of description of those things. Animals and transports, again, all very standard stuff. Goes into encumbrance, how much you can carry. I love this piece of art. Very evocative, kind of barbarian figure. So cool, so good. I love it. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Here's what the spells and stuff, again, the powers laid out. We'll take a look at Turn Undead. Again, very compact, very simplified. It's a cleric power. The duration is instantaneous. If you've played any fantasy games before, especially D&D, this will all make sense to you, the duration. Cast versus target number. Yes, so you're actually going to roll this, telling you, yes, you need to make a casting roll versus the target number to be successful. You can repel 1d8 target numbers worth of undead by brandishing your holy symbol. This lasts for a number of rounds equal to the stat die of your casting roll. During that time, they cannot get near you. Again, in ranges. They can't get within near, which is 5 feet of you. Simplified, again, leaves a lot of area for imagination and narrative gameplay. Goes into magic weapons and armor and treasure. There's a whole section on this. +1 weapons, +2 weapons, the bow of flame, dwarven hammers. Again, very, very cool. I love arms and equipment guides. Always been one of my favorites. I love to pull them off the shelf and just flip through them. I've always been a fan of different types of armor and weapons and gear. But I do appreciate the sort of simplistic nature of how this all fits in. And again, leaves a lot of space. And one of the things I want you to discover is in the back of this, so the GM's corner of it, it gives you aspects on how to create new magical weapons, as well as talks about how to do things like create NPCs and villains as well. But very simplified version of that, and how to do that, and how to make it more a balanced effect into your game. I should note at this point, now that I have said balanced, this game is fairly well balanced as far as how the encounters roll out, but I feel every good role-playing game, and again, this is my own personal opinion, not something that everybody follows, but I feel that every good role-playing game, at least for me and at my table, I want the game to be a little unbalanced. I want the players to have a challenge. I want them to know that they stumble into the dragon's lair. Just because they're second level doesn't mean that I have to be easy on them. I want the players to be thoughtful, and I want them to think out the things that they're doing, and not just expect that, hey, if he's letting us go here, then obviously we're safe, or at least we're going to have a challenge, but we're not going to probably die from the scenario. No. I want the world to be unpredictable. I want the world to be dangerous, and I want the players to be very invested in the creation and the choices that their characters make and the repercussions of those choices if they decide to make bad choices. This game does that to a fair degree. It allows you the power as a game master to make those worlds as dangerous as they need to be. And again, to Workhorse RPG Studios and Scott Myers, I appreciate that from the very bottom of my heart. We're going to quickly flip through the rest of this because the video is getting kind of long. If you've stayed up to this point, then thank you very much, and I hope that you'll go out and pick up a copy of this game. It's definitely well worth it. I just want to show you a couple more pieces of this artwork. A gorgeous piece right here. I mean, the doorway. Very evocative, gives you a lot of, just flipping through this book gives me tons and tons of ideas. I'm a very visual person as a game master and storyteller. So when I see a piece of art like this, it instantly starts to add into my imagination further ideas. It gives me these story seeds that I can add to my gameplay to make things just a little bit more narrative, a little bit more evocative and colorful for my players. So, Eyes Beyond the Torchlight, a fantasy adventure game by Workhorse RPG Studio and Scott Myers. Go check it out. I'll put a link down below so where you can find that. They're available on Amazon. You can also get them, the PDF, I believe, through DriveThruRpg. There might even be a print-on-demand option for that now as well. But please, go check this out. Check out the links, evaluate it, think about it. Look around on the internet, see what other reviews and stuff are out there on this game. I don't think you're going to be disappointed by this game at all. Until next time, I'm Questwise. Game on and stay safe, my friends.